Okay, so now we have understood what is project versus product project mindset, and what's the difference between that. And now let's talk about the next topic, which is on to the product management. Now, what exactly is product management? Now, in order to understand what's the product management, we have to understand the product life cycle. So when we say product life cycle, it's more about the cycle or the phases of the cycle the product goes through. Now, what are the different stages or the phases of the product life cycle? I've just created a picture of that. So let me bring it as it is. Okay, so let me select all and I'm going to bring it down over here. So now, product life cycle is all about the stages through which the product goes through. Now, it is on two tangents, time and value. Now, when we talk about a value, here we talk about the value for the creator of the product. Let's say it's revenue, positive. Let's talk about the investment. Instead of putting a negative revenue, it's more about the investment. Now, the different stages through which a product life cycle go through is the discovery, where most of your research activities happens. Launch, when we bring the product to the market. Growth, when the product grows and the value is realized. Mature, when the product goes into autopilot, or I can say support mode. And then decline, when we decide to take the product out of the market. Now, typically this graph goes like this. So it starts from discovery, then comes to the market, then see the maximum growth or maximum value, then maturity, and a point comes when it starts to decline. Now, throughout this product life cycle, there are a lot of activities a product goes through. Right from the discovery till the decline, a lot of activities happens. Now, all these activities that happens on the product throughout the product life cycle is called as product management. I'll repeat one more time. All the activities a product go through the product life cycle is called as product management. And these activities are around 4 areas. It's around research, strategy, development, and support, or we can say operations also. Now, in order to understand what are these activities, let's understand a concept which is a product quadrant. Now, the product quadrant, as it says, it is divided into 4 areas: research, strategy, development, and operations or support. Something like this. And the elements of this quadrant are strategy. And if there is a strategy, then execution and operations. Now, some strategical activities or execution activities which stays internal to the organization. And there are a few that are market phase. Now, what exactly these activities are? So we can divide these activities like this. So the activity what we are having over here, these activities are more of a research activity. Mm, let me put it over here. So these activities are research activities. I hope the spelling of research is clear. Then comes these activities, which are more of a strategy activities. Then we are having activities around operations. Okay. Hmm. Or let me put it in this way. Operations, and then there are activities around. Oh no, these activities are operations, and these activities are the development activities. So this is how we have defined it. Now the research activities are market research, trend analysis, customer research, personas, development, user interviews, surveys, competitive benchmarking, data-driven insights, pricing research. Now it is not like that. Okay, you cannot have only these activities as a part of your research. It all depends upon the organization to organization and product to product. So these activities can vary depending on the context. Similarly, the strategical activities are more around creating a product strategy, defining the vision, mission, defining the product goals, understanding the funding and budgeting, coming up with the initial requirements, creating product roadmaps, defining the success criteria, stakeholder alignment, your go-to-market strategy, release strategy, pricing strategy. Everything which is related to the strategy comes under this quadrant. And then on the strategy, we start the execution part, which is nothing but the product development part that needs deals with the product requirements, risks, releases, stakeholders, development budgeting, people, process, and delivery. And then the product that gets developed, it goes to operations, or you can say the support part. That's where we talk about the product analytics, performance monitoring, customer retention, churn predictions, customer support, the first line of support or customer onboarding, retaining the customer, deboarding the customer, collaboration, communication, and also the monitoring on the pricing part. Now, this is how these activities are divided. Now, if I have to put this into a context, then how I can do it? I can say these are the activities which are strategical in nature. It comes into this quadrant. The activities which are related to research goes to this quadrant. The development activities, let's say it comes into this quadrant, and then your support activities are in this quadrant. So this is how it is defined. Now your research activities helps us understand a well-defined problem that is there in hand and on which we have to work on. It also helps us understand the market and the customer insights. Now, the strategy quadrant leads us to a clear understanding of the product vision, roadmaps, its initial requirements, and what is the success criteria. The development quadrant leads us to a validated and a market-ready product. It also helps us the structured launch plan for the product. And the operations or the support part helps us with the scaling of the product, with the retention, monetization, and the growth part. Now, the activities what we have gathered over here. I can also add one more thing that this part, let's say this part is actually a research quadrant. Let me see if at all I can. No. So let me bring it from the top itself. So let's say this portion is a strategy. This one is a research quadrant. Then we are having a development quadrant. Let me bring this also down. And then we are having an operations quadrant. Let's bring this also down. So I can say this quadrant is the operations quadrant. This quadrant is the development quadrant. Something like this. So here we go. Now, see, product management is not something that came into market with the introduction of Scrum. The product management is there from centuries. The first aeroplane was a product. First steam engine was a product. Car was a product. Television, refrigerators, all were products. And they were actually having their defined life cycle. And the activities that we were doing on those products throughout the product life cycle, it was nothing but a product management for that. Now, if we talk about a traditional product development approach, then this particular part, which is on a development side, I would say this part, this is nothing but a project management. And traditionally, waterfall was used for the product development. So this particular quadrant from here to here, it was waterfall heavy, and we're having a role, or in fact, the waterfall, wherever we are using a waterfall for the product development, we are having a role that takes care of all the project management activities, and that role is project manager. So which means the development quadrant comes under the project manager if you are using waterfall as a methodology for the product development. And the remaining 3 quadrants comes under another role in the product space. That role is product manager. Now, if somebody asks, what is the difference between a product manager and a project manager? It's quite evident now. So a product manager is a strategical role which is market facing. Typically, the person who manages the research strategy and the operations part. It's not like that, okay, the product manager manages all the activities of that. These activities can be delegated to people or to the departments, but a person is there who overlook it. That person is a product manager who is actually accountable for these 3 quadrants. And then we are actually having a project manager, which is actually an execution role internal to the organization and takes care of the project management part. So the difference between the project manager and a product manager is more around the product manager is a strategical role, which is market facing. Project manager is the execution role that stays internal to the organization, and it takes care of the project management activities. And for project manager, product manager is one of the stakeholders. Now, this is how the product development was happening when we were using waterfall. But over a period of time, we realized that, okay, no, waterfall is not a right methodology for products that needs adaptive solutions. So that is where the introduction of Scrum happened. Now, with the introduction of Scrum, how the things changed. So let's take another quadrant to see how the things are changing. Over here, this part. So with the introduction of Scrum, this particular portion, which was waterfall, this got replaced with Scrum. And in Scrum, as I mentioned, it's a framework. It is having its own structure. And with the introduction of Scrum, a new structure came, wherein the three new roles got introduced. The first role, product owner. Second role, scrum master. And then developers. And together, it's a scrum team. Now, with the introduction of Scrum, only the role part was changed, but the project management was still there. Or the project management, I'd say, it's still there. Now, previously, we were having a project manager in Waterfall who was taking care of the project management. But now, with the introduction of Scrum, there is no role called as project manager. But as the project management is still there, so it's the Scrum team who actually takes care of project management activities in Scrum. And how? Now, see this particular part, which talks about the requirement, risk releases, stakeholder, budgeting. This part is mostly driven by the business. So I can say this is the business side of the product development. From here to here. Then from here to here, it is more related to the process framework and the people enablement part. And this is entirely onto the delivery. Now, as per Scrum, the business side of the product development goes under product owner. The process framework, people enablement goes under Scrum Master, and the delivery accountability lies with developers. So this is how Scrum team takes care of the project management activities. Now, if somebody asks us that, okay, what is the difference between a product manager and a product owner? Now, this helps us clarify. Because product manager is still a strategical role, which is market facing. And now the product owner becomes an execution role, which is internal to the organization and represent only the business side of the product. So I'll repeat one more time. Product manager is a strategical role, which is market facing, and the product owner becomes a execution role, which is internal to the organization, or I would say internal to the Scrum, and takes care of the business side of the product. So this is how we differentiate between product manager and product owner. But when Scrum started to mature and Scrum Guide came into existence, then one more version started to appear in the market, which was more onto the Scrum perspective side, or I would say more into the Scrum context side. Now I'm going to talk about the context of Scrum. See, in the context of Scrum, we don't have a role called as product manager. But the overall accountability of the value maximization, I would say, success of the product lies with a role which is product owner. Now, product owner, just by managing the business side of the product development, won't be able to add the value to the product or won't be able to make a product success. Because in order to make a product success, one needs the whole quadrant. But as we already have a product manager over here, so how? As I mentioned, in the context of Scrum, we don't have a role called as product manager. So what happens in the context of Scrum? Your product manager, who's actually taking care of the three quadrants, also take an additional quadrant to represent the business side of the product development to the team. So this part. Now, if your product manager start to represent the business side of the product development to the Scrum team, then we can say our product manager in Agile, or I would say the product manager in the context of Scrum, is nothing but a product owner now. Something like this. So this person is nothing but a, let's say, product owner. So here we go. So in the context of Scrum, your product owner is the one who represents all the four quadrants or takes care of the product management. And Scrum fits into the product management for the development part. Now, different organizations, they are having a different structure. So I'm not going to comment that, okay, yes, the product owner is the only one who will actually takes care of the product quadrant. As I mentioned, in the context of Scrum, this is what it is. But if your context is different and you're actually having a very big product, which is having a huge dependency on the third parties, vendors, and you are actually having a multiple teams who are working on the product, then you will be having a lot of challenges in the product development. And that needs some scaling solutions. Though Scrum is not a scaling framework, so if at all you are into that context, you might need to go for a scaling structure. And when you go for a scaling structure, just make sure you follow their structure. If at all we are in a context of Scrum, then this is how Scrum represents the product management. But if we are on a scaling structure, then just follow the structure that you opt for. For example, I'm just going to take a very minor example, a small example. Now consider that you are not into a product development, but a solution development. Solution development, like you are actually working on an Office 365, which is nothing but a suite of products. So you are actually having a product like Word, Excel, Outlook, or there could be some other products also. And then you are actually having a person who takes the decision at the Office 365 level. Then we need someone who takes the accountability of this product, then similarly Excel as a product, and then Outlook as a product. Now, if I'll go with the Scrum, then this is actually going to add up to a lot of challenges which is related to the scaling. So Scrum might not be a good fit for this kind of solution. So what we do in this kind of situation is we go for a scaling structure. Scaling structures like, let's say, scaled agile framework. Now, if you go with a scaled agile framework, then please follow their structure. And in their structure, if you're having a product like this, then they consider this person as a product manager. They call this a product management group, but there's a role called as product manager, and they consider them as a product. Similarly, if you go for another structure, which is large scale major, in that they recognize this person as a product owner, and they consider them as the area product owners. If you go with the another structure, which is Scrum at scale, in Scrum at scale, they say these people are product owner because the Word, Excel, Outlook is a product, and they recognize this person as chief product owner. Now, in the context of Scrum, in the context of Nexus, in Nexus, they recognize this person as a product owner, and they say you will develop a product management knowledge within the product teams so that product owner can start to delegate some of the responsibilities to them. Though there is no formal role called as a product business analyst in Nexus, but I have seen most of the time we get a representative from a team who present the product owner to the team. And most of the time in industry, we'll see we call them as a business analyst. So what is happening? Depending on the structure, we are calling this person as a product manager or chief product owner or product owner. And alternatively, we call this person as a product owner, area product owner, business analyst. So I usually say that in whichever context you are, use that structure. And this particular roles in the product management may vary from organization to organization also. So this is what the concept of your product management is. Don't worry, this particular video will be converted into a PDF document also with all the details, and it's going to be a high a high-end, a high-definition document or high-resolution document, in fact. So you can actually download that and use it for your reference. So this is about your product management.